Welcome to the Dropping into Power podcast, where we'll be hearing stories about the transformational power of surfing from women surfers of all ages, all levels, and all over. We'll hear about courage, commitment, struggles, frustration, epiphany, and, of course, life transformations large and small. I'm your host, Sheila Gallion, and I am stoked to share these conversations with these amazing women full of so much passion with all of you. Aloha and welcome to the Dropping into Power podcast. So excited to be here with my friend today and just super badass woman, Captain McKenzie Clark, who recently got her captain's license, and definitely a woman whose life has been informed and transformed by being in the water. She's one of the best surfers in our lineup, and she fought and scratched to get there. Well, she's nodding her head like, yeah. She's somebody that I follow and watch her style, and also know that she started as an adult, as a younger adult than some of us, but that every wave has been earned, scratched for, dug for. And we were chatting out in the water one day, and she started to tell me some of her story. And I was like, you got to be on the podcast. And she has kindly agreed. So welcome, McKenzie.
Hi, thank you for that, Sheila.
So I just want to know everything. And basically, I want to kind of start with the beginning. So where were you and what happened in your life that drew you to Hawaii and to surfing? How did that all start for you?
It's hard to trace it all the way back, but I grew up with two older brothers, and I think I spent most of my childhood trying to keep up with them and wanting to do what they did. And I was the baby and the only girl. And so there were a lot of things I wasn't allowed to do because I wasn't big enough or I wasn't one of the guys. And so I think that became a part of my psyche, is like, I'm going to do what my brothers get to do. And I get to do, I want to do what the boys do. And I remember, so my mom brought us out to Kona when I was 7, when she was able to scrounge enough money to get us out here on a trip. So we had this little family vacation. And I remember vaguely that I think we went on the Fairwinds cruise to Kealakekua Bay. And my brothers and mom got to go snorkel, and I had to sit on the boat. My mom didn't feel comfortable with letting me snorkel, and I was just absolutely heartbroken. And it's funny because now, living in Hawaii for over 23 years, I know surfers, I know kids that surf at like 2 years old, and kids who learn to swim when they're still babies. So, but that was her level of comfort with me at the time. And I think ever since then, I had this crazy obsession with being in a warm ocean. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and we would go to the coast when I was a kid, and there was no swimming. We would get up to our waists. The water was really cold, and there's pictures of us completely wet. So we would get, we would dunk, but it was pretty freezing. And I don't even recall seeing surfers then. I know that people surf in Oregon, but as a kid, it wasn't something that registered to me. So anyway, I started working at a really young age and just saved up money because I knew that when I graduated high school, I was going to move somewhere warm and tropical. Oregon or Portland specifically sees about 9 months of clouds and gray sky and rain. And so I didn't quite know where exactly, but I have kind of family ties to Kona. And so that's where I decided. And as soon as I got my braces off, I moved out here. At first, one of my brothers moved out with me. He only stayed about 3 months, and then I stayed. From there, I started snorkeling. That was like my goal.
You did, right? I'm in that water with a snorkel.
Yeah. Get in the ocean, learn about it. I was completely out of my element. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know about currents. I didn't know about tides or waves or anything associated with the ocean. So I had to learn all of that over time. And again, I had never even seen a surfer before at 18. So it took off from there. I started scuba diving, and then surfing slowly became, I got to do it a couple of times. And then right around my 21st birthday, I started really surfing, or trying to, every day. I lived near Kahaluu, and that's where I started. Yeah, it became something I tried to do every day.
So I want to describe Kahaluu for people. So it can be, ironically, it's where all the surf schools now go. But for some perspective, on all of the Kona surf breaks, it's rocky, reefy, sea urchiny bottom. Like you don't, like you see surf schools where people walk their boards out and turn it around. This isn't what happens at Kahaluu. You can't put your feet down. But back then, and I'll ask you the exact year in a minute, there were no surf schools. But the other thing I'd say about it is, yeah, they bring the surf schools there, but it is also an incredibly gnarly wave when it gets bigger, and the currents are incredibly strong. They'll drag you down. Lifeguard rescues happen pretty regularly. When it gets low tide and the waves pick up, it just sucks up, and all you see is rocky, jagged, sea urchin, Vana infested reef down below. And I've been bounced on that reef many times and bloodied. And it's
Absolutely
not what you would think of as, I'm going to learn to surf. And the surf schools have you on these giant boards and keep you in a very safe area. But learning to surf at Kahaluu, anywhere on the Big Island, is a challenge. So I just want to set that up so that it's not like you're just, out at Waikiki or, somewhere in San Diego or something.
Plus, even when you're beginning, even just to get out to the lineup, not just the inside where you're learning to surf, but when you graduate from surfing whitewater and you have to move out to the bigger waves into the lineup, on the south side, there's like a closeout wave that you have to get past to get to the reef break in the middle, because there's a right and a left there. Yeah. So most of us don't know how to duck dive when we start. And that is the beginning of that learning process. And then if you go around to the north, you can get stuck in a really strong current. So, you don't know that right away. You have no idea about any of those elements. You're just getting pummeled and you don't understand what to do.
Right. And nobody's telling you. So what year was this?
So I moved to Hawaii in 1998, and it was a solid at least year or two before some acquaintance took me out surfing for the first time. I remember there was a surf school at that time. It was probably the year 2000 when I kind of really started. Mm-hmm. And there was a surf school, and one of the surf school guides lent me a longboard. And I believe that was my first time going out, if I remember correctly. And he told me just about the little egg beater thing and how to spin around on your board with your legs while sitting.
Oh, right. I forgot about having to learn that, right?
Yeah. Right. And maybe how to turtle or how to fall flat so you don't hit your head on the reef. And I'm sure I messed around in the whitewater. I recall not being able to stand up my first session.
Okay.
And I remember another vague occasion where I went out to the bay at Pine Trees, and I believe I did stand up for the first time. And I can't honestly remember how I felt. I just knew that there was something. I don't even recall really enjoying it. It became an obsession. This is something I have to learn how to do.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah.
I'm very much a immediate gratification type person. So the slow process of learning things is really, really hard for me.
Right. Right.
So it would get frustrating. And there were a million times that I wanted to quit, for sure.
Yes. So as you kind of progressed in Kahaluu, when did you start riding a shorter board?
I think I got over longboarding pretty quickly because I would get dragged so far.
Yeah.
And I felt like the board itself was overpowering me.
Yeah.
And I would see the guys, do cool tricks on their little boards, and I wanted to go smaller. So I remember I was riding probably a 9-foot or a 10-foot just beater longboard.
Yeah.
And I found this 7/8 kind of high performance in between board. And I recall that board, I learned so much on that board. That's where I really started making gains in my surfing. I started learning you're not just going straight, you're actually following the face of the wave, and you don't understand that at first. You think you're just riding the whitewater straight in, and I'd be riding the whitewater straight in and basically dropping in on people and getting in people's ways and hitting people. I mean, I was notorious for being in the way and dropping in on people. And people have told me this, and that is not a real ego booster at all when you spend so much time, but I knew nothing. And
notorious. That's funny.
And I basically had to learn the etiquette by people yelling at me, you know?
Yeah, I relate. And and if you didn't have a guide, because just, for people listening, like there was barely internet, I mean, we had internet, but people, I don't even know when YouTube was created. I don't think it was, there were certainly no YouTube videos about this. I don't think YouTube was around yet.
I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a computer for years. I didn't even have a car. See, that's the other element. I didn't have a car. And I met my first boyfriend out here, when I was 18. I was a late bloomer. And at one point, so we moved in together, and he was not a good surfer at all. He was basically learning too. He had lived on Big Island when he was a kid and had surfed a little bit back in the day. But we basically were trying to learn together. We were both just bad. And when he was working, which he was a, Monday through Friday, 7 to whatever guy. So I would find myself walking down Ali'i Drive with my board, my longboard, to get in the water. So it was a commitment. And I eventually got a moped, and I would strap the surfboard onto the moped with bungee cords. Like, it was so dangerous because I didn't really have access to one side of my moped to put my foot down. And then if a wind gust blew, I would go off the road almost.
Oh my gosh. It's just such a different time and a different concept of just all the stuff you can get now. And everybody gets all the stuff, And I'm not saying don't get the stuff. I'm just saying it's totally different world. And and no money. You are, I'm sure, dead broke, and
no money. And I didn't even know that board racks were a thing.
Right.
And my moped was not strong, and it didn't start half the time. It was a scene. For me, moving to Hawaii was like a second childhood.
Oh, and I love that.
Now at the age of 42, I feel like I'm just starting to become an adult in a way.
Yeah.
And where I grew up, things didn't resonate with me there. I never felt at home. I never felt like that was my place. So when I moved out here, it was the first time I really felt happy and a part of a place, and felt that that's where I wanted to be. And then when surfing came along, it was the first activity I wanted to do every day. The first thing I had experienced in my life that I wanted to commit to. I think that pushed me through the days where, people would yell at me, or I couldn't get waves, or I would just be battling the current the entire time and feel like I was not getting any better. All throughout your surfing career, you reach these plateaus, and it can be really frustrating when you feel like that's as good as you can get,
And in those, so how do you get through, or how have you dealt with those plateaus?
Oh, there's been a lot. I haven't really experienced that for a while. I mean, of course, I've had bad surf sessions and frustrating surf sessions. That happens frequently, but I haven't really felt a personal plateau. If I felt that lately, it's more because of the waves themselves. Like, Kona is a very fickle place and for waves, and we don't get a lot of waves that we would desire in our imagination out here.
Right.
So, maybe I would take a day off, or I'd be frustrated for an hour, and then I would just get over it and go back out.
Something is in that inner, whatever that thing we all have, that inner commitment, like you said, that just keeps drawing you back. And
yeah, I remember at a certain point distinctly feeling like, I don't even know if I like doing this. It's just that I made a commitment to do it. And I can't back down. And there was this aspect that obviously relates to my childhood experience. Like, no, I'm going to continue doing this. This is what the guys do, and I can do this. And I want to get to a place where I'm a contender out here.
Mm-hmm.
Some days I feel like I am, and some days I don't.
So, yeah, I want to talk about, because you talked about really progressing when you went on surf trips. And it is true. Kona waves are difficult. They're mostly what they are is very short. Yeah. At least that's in my experience now. Because even though I've been surfing almost as long as you, about the same time, I don't have the same ability. And that had to do with a lot of my life and becoming a single mom and, doing, not getting to surf every day and not getting to be in waves that are, performance in any way. But it seems to me one of the big challenges here is it's very rare to get waves that allow you to figure out how to turn. That's so you just don't, by the time you're like, okay. And McKenzie, I just want to say, has such a killer pop-up. I know a lot of us struggle with a pop-up, but I watch her with terrific envy because you can get in very late. You just have this ability, and that's really, it's not a sexist comment. It's definitely, I see it less frequently for women.
Yeah.
And I think it's just for all kinds of reasons. A lot of us start much later. The young girls now, totally different story. That's, they're starting on an even playing field. So it's different, but it's been harder. Also, I believe that women often see the consequences of what could happen in a different way than boys. And I mean, I watch 30-year-old guys go out there just so fearless, they just go over that, like, it's just a different brain. So it's something I really get challenged with, is being able to take later drops. And especially here in Kona, if you can't take late drops, you miss out on 90% of the waves. Like you're just, so you don't get that opportunity. So that's my obsession now, is figuring out how to do that.
And you nailed it really when you said the fear factor element. I think those, making airdrops and making those steep drops, it's all about trying to push away that fear, the consequence. And it's a lot about confidence. I've paid dues. I've paid a lot of dues. And I've not made those drops a lot with consequences, and I don't know how I have been able to push past it, but I think I start now backing off more than I have before, because I'm getting older and I have hurt myself a lot. And you understand that when you get a good one, you crash on the reef hard, you're out of the water for quite a while. Right. And the older you get, the longer it takes to heal. And so I'm not exactly sure where that came from, but I know surfing, the spot I first started surfing, like exactly what you said. If you don't make that drop, you're not getting it. Right. And everyone out there knows the spot, and they're dropping it deeper and deeper. And so you just get pushed deeper and deeper and deeper until you start making it.
So where did you go? I remember you mentioned to me that you went on a surf trip somewhere, and that even that first surf trip really helped your progression.
Yeah. So moving to Hawaii was kind of the birth of my travel lust. I always had that in me. I wanted to travel the world, and I didn't know in what capacity that would kind of transpire. So it was through surfing that my travel kind of developed. So my first trip, I went to New Zealand with my dad, and I think I had been shortboarding for maybe a year. So I was bad. I mean, I was still really bad, but I guess I do remember receiving comments that I was a charger or whatever, because I would go on stuff that I probably had I had no business going on, So I went to New Zealand. It was more just we bought a crappy little car and drove around both islands, but I did surf a few times over there, and I met some surfers, and I even got my dad out on the board once. And but then after that, I went to Australia by myself. And that was the first time I'd gone anywhere by myself, really, besides, living in Hawaii. So I just had a surfboard and a backpack, and I didn't know what I was doing. Again, this was before internet, really. I don't even recall if I had an email address, and maybe I had a Lonely Planet book, and that's really the information I had to go find a place to stay and places to go. You can't just look stuff up and book it. I would walk to these places. Hey, do you have a room that I can stay in? And that's how you'd find your places. And anyway, I met this couple from England in Australia, just outside of Sydney, and they were traveling in their, I think it was like a Volkswagen bus. They call it a combi over there. I basically was like, would you take on a straggler? And I think they were kind of getting really sick of each other. And they were like, yeah, come on with us. They weren't surfers, but we would go to these little areas and I would just go surf. And then I met some local surfer guys who, obviously were trying to get what they could get out of me, but I kind of held my boundaries with that. That's nice. But I ended up meeting this guy, and we were just friends, but he had this camper and we just went and surfed all up and down the coast.
Oh my gosh.
And it was super fun. And it's a different, that was my first real experience with sandy bottom waves, and beach break too. I had never surfed a beach break. And I mean, they were steep and they were fast, but it was less consequence. So I think I just started going on stuff and probably getting launched and eating it and purling, and just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And so I was there for a month, came back home. And then my next trip which was a solo trip again, was to Costa Rica. I brought my board and my backpack and just kind of, took the public buses and found, I think I had my Lonely Planet book, and okay, I'm going to go to this place, and would show up there and just start surfing. And I spent 3 months in Costa Rica and about a month and a half in one place. And I surfed probably 7 to 9 hours every day that there were waves. And by the end of it, people were like, I was like one of the best girls out there, which wasn't really saying much because it was very much a beginner type of a place. And there weren't a lot of ripper chicks out there in general at that time. I got a lot better and I learned a lot with my surfing.
Can I just say that makes me feel better that you surfed somewhere 3 months for 7 to 9 hours when you were still pretty young, and that helped your progression. That makes me feel better about not being quite as progressed as I am.
Oh, everybody has a different journey, and I didn't.
I know. I just played. Yeah. And I mean, what an amazing, and how adventurous and amazing to do that as a young woman and just have that conviction and that commitment. It was not common. I'm not saying it was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah. Certainly people your age, my age, older, we really get it. But it was when you traveled somewhere, you did not know where you were going.
No.
There was no GPS. There was no, you just showed up. You didn't even know for sure if the break you were going to was going to look like the way you maybe thought it was going to look, or even had heard of it.
Or if it was the right time of year. I mean, Lonely Planet might have 3 words, best in, the spring or something like that. But
exactly.
You really had no idea. There was no, not to our fingertips anyway, the people who had access to all this probably had more information, but we didn't have surf reports and like that. So you're just winging it all the time.
I mean, even when I started in 2001, I could get on the internet and get the buoy reports. So I would go to Buoy Weather, and then I would learn to read the buoys. In Humboldt, it was really important because otherwise you'd drive really far and either it was 20 feet or, just not there or whatever. So, but I also remember, that same time you could call for a surf report, we could call for a buoy report, not really a surf report. They would kind of give that information, but even being able to decipher that as a new surfer, if you even knew to do that.
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't have it for Costa Rica. like none of that stuff was set up. So anyways, how awesome and amazing.
Well, I remember back in the day when I, first moved out here, West Hawaii Today had the little big island or the island chain, and it would be like 2 to 4.
Oh, I remember that.
0 to 1, but it would kind of give you.
Oh, that's so funny. I remember that now.
And
I guess I don't get the real paper anymore. So I don't know if it's still on there.
It's not. I get the paper and it's
okay. Yeah. And of course, even that's not accurate, but yeah, that's so cool. I love that you did that. And, and so where else did you go?
So let's see, after Costa Rica, I think my next more surf specific, although I always chose my travel destinations based on more than just surfing, because I would quit my job. I would get rid of where I was staying. I would sell if I had a vehicle, I would sell it, not knowing if I was coming back or not. Just
wow.
I would clean slate it just so that I was open to possibility. And
wow.
I would always be pulled back here. I always wanted to come back to Big Island. I would have this draw. It pulls me back every time. And when I'm gone for a certain amount of time, I already intrinsically know that I've been gone too long. Anyway, I don't know what that's about, but
I love it.
I think my next trip was to South America, and I was dating this guy, and I had been saving money. I'm a good saver. So I just saved. And because I knew I wanted to be gone for like maybe 6 months, maybe a year. I don't know. I just want to go and see what happens. And again, no plan, just a Lonely Planet book, no reservations, no place to stay, surfboard, backpack, and a shoestring budget. Right. So I dragged my boyfriend at the time to Brazil, and we traveled up the coast of Brazil, surfed a little bit. It was less about surfing and more about kind of just exploring. And I don't think he was enjoying himself at all. We reached a point where he ran out of money and he had to go back home. And I didn't want him to go. And I remember he had to like leave in the middle of the night. And it was just this weird like situation. We were in this horrible, horrible city. And I was like, no, don't go. I'll pay for everything until, I run out of money. And he was like, no, I can't do that. And he left. But then I just continued on. And
wow.
I remember that morning hopping a tiny little like 8-seater plane into the Amazon. And then I had to take a boat and then another plane. And I had a surfboard. And I, at the time, I was incredibly naive. And I thought I was clever, but I was incredibly naive. And I had these bleach blonde dreadlocks and wore board shorts and probably no bra. And I just stuck out, and I was a target, for, people knew I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right. But I made my way over to Peru and then kind of surfed up the coast and ended up in Ecuador. And again, I stayed in one spot for about a month and surfed my brains out and just kept exploring and trying to surf wherever I could. But I would also go up into the mountains and go to other places. So it wasn't exclusively surf. It was, there was a lot of places I wanted to see and things I wanted to do.
I just want to honor you for, being so true to yourself as a young woman, not following a guy back, doing those things. It was honorable to be like, I'll pay for you, you stay, but then he leaves. It's not the most common story in the world, So I just want to give you credit and honor you for being so true to yourself and being like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Huge adventures. Incredible.
If anything, the one thing I've tried to do in my life is to not let fear dictate my decisions. And
you are demonstrating that pretty well. Yes.
And I've made poor decisions, and of course we've all made mistakes, but that is a red thread throughout my, life starting with moving out to Hawaii, is that I try not to hold myself back because of the things I'm afraid of. So, and I choose also, you talk to certain people and they say, don't go there, it's dangerous. And of course I heed some of that advice with certain places, but I also chose to go places with an open mind. And I choose to trust and to not let the fear of other humans stop me either. And I have found by and large that people are wonderful wherever you go, and they're helpful, and they really, change your whole experience. And I've found myself so many times in bad positions where I needed help, and people were there and they helped me along the way. And that's been a really important learning.
That is so precious. I have found that to be true too. I did a lot of wild traveling across the US, following Grateful Dead shows and just getting into all kinds of precarious situations, cars breaking down, and it's amazing how beautiful humans are and
Sure.
can be. I mean, there's all the bad ones, there's the bad pieces, but really it's shocking how many angels can show up. But you have definitely, you've stirred it up. So this might be a good time to ask you, and I know you don't want to go into the whole story of it, but you had the encounter in the ocean that many of us fear, of having an animal interact with you. Yes. And I just want to ask you, maybe speaking to that fear, how did you get through that? And, how did it affect your relationship with the ocean?
So I don't know if at some point I felt like I might get attacked by a shark. I don't know if everyone thinks this. Every surfer, I know it's every surfer's fear, but if, you can call it manifesting or whatever. I don't know if I know that particular day I was surfing a particular spot. It was only my second time surfing there. And it is renowned for being a sharky spot. The water's murky. It's very exposed to open ocean and wind. It can be a real heavy spot. The waves get really big. It wasn't that big that day. There was a bunch of people in the water, but I do recall, and I don't know what people will think of this. It doesn't matter, but I distinctly remember thinking, I hope no one gets attacked by a shark today, but if they do, it probably should be me. And I don't know why I thought that. I didn't have control of the thought. It just was there. I think it maybe because I was surfing with my friend Brian, and at the time he was like 250 pounds or something. And if somebody else got hurt, that would be hard for me. I've gotten hurt so many times in my life. I know how to stay calm when I see into my body, when I see my own flesh, when I see my own self bleeding, I'm okay. I can stay calm and I can keep other people calm. And I have a pretty high pain threshold. So I feel like less so with other people. I can't, maybe I won't stay as calm. I have been in that position where I needed to help people and I did stay calm, but I feel like I'm better at, taking it on myself. Maybe that's, that's definitely another childhood thing, but, so I don't know if that's putting that out in the universe. I wasn't inviting it, or I wasn't trying to, but I also at that time, a bunch of people went in, like the morning people went in, and then I was the smallest person out there and with the smallest board. So I think that was a big factor in the whole experience. And what was your question again?
I was just asking how you got through that, how, and sharing as much as you feel like it, but keeping it, your own sacred story. So.
Well, yeah, I think that goes along with what I was just saying. Because it's me, I have a way of, staying calm and keeping myself under control because I know I can get through it.
And getting back into the water, what was that like?
It was a longer healing process than you would think for the size of my injury. The injury wasn't I know Bethany Hamilton lost a whole arm. And by the way, it was the same day. It was October 31st, Halloween. Hers was, I think, 11 years prior to mine.
Oh.
And, she lost her whole arm and I lost a fingertip. I also remember at the time, as my hand was in the shark's mouth, like, oh man, this is a small shark. I was like disappointed that I was attacked by what appeared to be a small shark, although it was probably 10 to 12 feet. And, that is definitely some weird thing with me, wanting to be tough or something. Like, this is it. I'm getting attacked, but look at how small it is.
Well, yeah, if you're going to be attacked by a shark, you would be an 18-foot tiger,
Right.
Exactly. I mean, you do, that's a funny, but
strange
I do get it.
Strange things that went through my head in that instance that felt like it took a really, really long time, but also felt like 3 seconds. So it's impossible for me to know how long the whole experience was, but a lot of weird thoughts went through my head. And so getting back in the water, so it was kind of a long healing process because I had to get a skin graft and, it just took a long time. Mm-hmm. And I probably could have gotten in the water earlier, but, I've had staph infections and things like that. And I just wanted to do it right and make sure that my hand was good to go when I got back in the water. And as per my typical surf session, I was by myself. And it was at Pine Trees and there was a couple people out, but of course the paddle out was alone. And to me, it was like, okay, well, this is okay. Let's not make a big deal out of this. Let's just get out there, So I paddle out there and nobody knows, and people know, but nobody's, you think, does everybody know what happened? Are they going to say anything? And like I paddle out and people were just like, hey. But I don't really recall. I believe I did end up talking to some people I knew out there and like, oh, this is my first day back. And I don't know if the weight of it was there on me. And I don't know if the weight was there for other people. It was, kind of the big deal for me, but as true to my normal fashion, I just like went on with it. Okay, Here we are. We're just going to surf. And of course, I was out of practice and I felt vulnerable and I didn't have my pop up and my hand was still bandaged and weak, very weak. So that was a factor. And, I just had to get back on it and do it. And I remember at some point, I can't remember if it was that session. It may have been that session that Paul was out, and Paul had been attacked about a year prior to me, or maybe even less. And he had been bitten on the hand as well. And I think he may have been out, and it was kind of a heavy moment. Like, yeah, this is my first session. He's like, wow, okay, here we are, and
nice. Wow. It's heavy. It's because you don't know. This is, kind of unrelated, but my dad there was an airliner in, it was the 80s from China Air. And he was coming into San Francisco and the pilots had lost control and the plane plummeted. I'm bad at numbers, but far. And, everybody thought they were going to die. It plunged from the sky. Everything flew out, hit people in the head. People threw up, people got passed out, he lost, we believe, some of his hearing from it. The plane pulled out, but ironically, he was never afraid of flying after that. He had other issues. He didn't like to be in elevators and he didn't like to be in the back of cars. I think it's partly because he's a statistician. So he was like, well, that's not going to happen again.
Sure.
So, but yeah, weirdly, he had absolutely no issue with it. And so I don't know. And I don't want to get you to plumb your psychological depths if you're uncomfortable, but do you think about it happening again? Or are you pretty confident, or is it just the same as ever? Like there's wild animals here and stuff could happen.
I think it's the same as ever. for the first long time, of course, it was something I thought about every day when I paddled out. Every day, it was there. Like, it didn't stop me from doing anything. It was just a thought. Like, I got attacked by a shark. There are sharks out here. It wasn't necessarily a fear of getting attacked again. It was just an acknowledgement that was something that happened.
Right.
And I do remember thinking, like, at least for that first year, when people would paddle around me or, paddle battle me or just, not give me a wave or whatever, I'd be like, man, what does a girl have to do to just get a wave? Like, can't I paid some heavy dues. Can I just get some waves? Can you just give up one for me, please? Just one. Like, I'm not asking for much, but like, did that earn me that much, clout that you could just give me one wave because I went through this thing? But
seriously,
that's just not how life works. And everyone is wanting theirs, and I do the same. And everyone's gone through something. And so I had to put that away. Like, it didn't earn me anything as far as getting waves. And it may have earned me some tough points and maybe some respect for continuing to do what I do. But people have asked me a lot about that. Like, how can you, especially non-surfers, like how can you surf again? I mean, I've been in so many car accidents and I still drive. It's something to do. If it's a part of your life, where, as cliche as it sounds, most surfers will say it's not just a sport, it's a lifestyle. It changes your whole life, right? It becomes a focal point of your whole existence. So it would have to take a lot more than a fingertip to take that part of my life away,
Right. Right.
But so I can't say that I think about it every day anymore. I love sharks. I mean, I still swim with them. I dive with them. I still like jumping in and cruising with them. So that really hasn't changed any part. But I do recall saying to someone, and she wasn't a statistician, but she was very smart. And however you say that word, but I said, I mean, what's the likelihood of it happening again? And she said, well, your chances are exactly the same as they were before that. I'm like, well, that's not a very nice thing to say.
Well, I guess so. I guess I could see, I mean, I'd have to hear that reasoning, but I suppose because.
I mean, it just reset. It's the same odds as it was before. And I'm like, well, crap.
Yeah, that's not fair. That doesn't seem right to me. Now, I want to shift to another hazard in the water, which is former boyfriends.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Because this is a very real thing for women and for men too, but I'm going to make a gender generalization here, which is I just think men typically, most men, not all, compartmentalize a little better.
Yes.
So they have an easier time focusing if their ex is in the water. There's also a boys club still in a lot of cases. Yeah. So it's not like you're the only woman sitting at the peak with your two exes. I mean, it's like he's not out there with his two exes and, maybe the woman that he dated 5 years ago for a minute. I mean, this is a hazard, especially in a small town. We live in a small town. The surf community is very small. If you live here a long time, like 23 years, really good chance you're going to have dated a couple of guys. And for the men, it's not nearly as much because not very many women surf by comparison.
Well, I do believe that balance is changing.
It is absolutely changing
now. A lot.
Yeah, way. Yeah.
But
And so we'll talk about that after what you've seen in Kona, but because I happen to know, that we were out the other day, it happens all the time for you, that you've got like two.
There would be more, but some of them don't live here anymore. And that's great. So.
Right, of course, because, you've been here a while.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, how do you keep your head? Like, does it affect your surfing? What have you developed to sort of, get through that?
Just to go back and kind of generalize myself, I think typically in general, men don't date surfers. And a lot of men do date surfers, but it's more likely that a woman surfer is dating a man surfer, whereas it's a lot less likely that a man surfer is dating a woman surfer, if that makes sense. So I tend to, I like to share my activities with my partners, right? So yeah, I've been with some surfers, and yeah. There was one day I saw 3 in one day. Long-term boyfriends. I don't, let's just get that out there. Like I don't date around too much. So these were 3, I've been out here 23 years. These were 3 long-term boyfriends. And where I surf most now, because it's close to my house, both of my exes surf there all the time too. And it's just something, luckily, the breakups, whether or not they ended amicably, there has become a pseudo friendship there with both of them, where there's respect. And I've always tried to be honest and respectful and amicable and leave the situations with my head held high. And so the factor is getting over how much do I want to say? The seeing the exes, it can be annoying, but it also depends on maybe the emotions that were suspended at the time of the breakup. So one was, my choice, and so I was happy that it ended. So merely seeing him as more annoying and not hurtful, whereas another one, it was painful because there was a lot left unfinished. So, just those normal emotions that we have in breakups, you're taking that out there in the lineup while doing the thing that helps you get through this stuff.
Right.
So you're out there trying to work through these emotions, but you're faced with the cause of it as well. And so, with anything and everything, it's just time. The more it happens, the more you kind of become numb to it, or the easier it is, or maybe the more apparent it is that the choices you've made are correct and you're on the right path, because it gets easier and you see things, you see reality more like, okay, this is how it is supposed to be. I don't know, maybe there's a certain clarity to it, or maybe there's surfing in general for a female, I think, I don't know if males feel those same emotions, but it's very vulnerable. You're vulnerable out there. You're in a bikini, or you're showing your body off. You're trying to be good at this thing you're not that great at. You're dealing with machismo. You're dealing with people who are really good and much better than you. You're dealing with lineups. You're dealing with people paddling around you. You're dealing with so much stuff. Yeah. So then you compound it with this person or these other emotions that have nothing to do with surfing. So you're out there and there's just a lot of stuff going on in your head. And when you're surfing, you want really not much going on in your head. So I don't know, it just adds another element to the whole challenge.
Well, it's an incredible, practice of focus and self-worth and strength and concentration, all of these pieces. So, it's been a while since I had to face that, but it was very intense for me when I had to do it. And because it was my solace,
yes.
And then it's really an incredible microcosm of life, what you just described. And I want to pull that out when I do the little write-up on this, that idea of how vulnerable we are, and you didn't even mention, because it's the most manageable part of it. It's the part that non-surfers don't understand, like the vulnerability to the ocean and the vulnerability to injury and the vulnerability. And then, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but I will feel like a failure if I'm not reading the ocean right.
Exactly.
Like I feel less than I'm not reading the ocean right. But all of that is easier and more manageable than dealing with people.
Yeah.
which is why I choose to surf as often as possible, far away from people, because I really have a struggle with that. Like, I can't seem to find my own spot, mental spot.
Yeah.
So sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but actually relatively rarely for me. So so you bring all that in, and it's just, I think it's a testimony to how surfing trains us in life, kind of everything you just described this is how you have in my opinion, successful life, is you are dealing with all of these things, you're facing them, you're continuing to do the life you love and having dignity and letting all this stuff come up that you have to manage and still catching a wave.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? You do all this and you still can, and sometimes you don't. Probably sometimes in some of those sessions, you probably get in, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm guessing sometimes you get in your head so much you don't get that wave. And other times you get that wave. And I will tell you that McKenzie gets the wave a lot of the time. Yeah. I mean, one thing I noticed, and of course I can't see inside your head, but I can see that you have developed this presence and focus. It shows in how the waves come to you. It shows in your wave knowledge of how you go to the waves. It shows in your takeoffs. It shows in how you approach surfing. And you also have shields up in a certain way. You're not approachable, not in a mean way, but this is what it's taken for you to sit in your strength. And I do think it's something that a woman develops differently than a man in the lineup. We're just different. We really are different animals, and we're all human, but it's hard to say nature versus nurture. I don't know. The boys have developed a surfing culture different than what's now happening and changing. And, it is different. And, you and I have talked about a little bit, I absolutely prefer surfing with women in the lineup, but sometimes if it's a woman closer to my level, I'm not that happy to see her because she's going to sit where I want to sit, and pick off the waves where I want to pick off. So sometimes I'd rather surf with people who are a lot better than me because they're going to sit where I can't possibly take off, and never get that wave. And they don't want my wave, so, but I still think, and I wrote this whole article recently, that the number one thing we've got generally going for us as women is trying not to be assholes.
Right. And I'm wanting to take notes because you've just said so many things that I would like to talk about. And it's you really touched on a lot of things there. And, but I will have to disagree with preferring to surf with women rather than men. And now sometimes, especially at our spot that we go to, it's all these people we know and really enjoy, you and Carla and Lay and Anna and Sunny. When we're all out there, oh yeah. I mean, it's an absolute blast. We're all around the same age and we've been, some of them have grown up here, but we've, been surfing a long time, and it is just so fun. And we kind of know each other's level and we encourage each other and push each other on. But I feel like I get more competitive with women than I do men out there.
Yeah.
And I often see, and I do the same thing. So it's kind of not fair for me to say, but I feel that I see women paddling around me more now than men for some reason.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know I don't know what that's about, but I get I get more irritated than I'd like to. And I find myself getting very aggressive. I mean, I'm competitive. I don't like to say that I am competitive, but I definitely am. And you have to be to actually to get waves, because you're rarely going to be solo out there,
Right.
You spend so many years learning the etiquette and then learning that if you're good enough, you don't have to play by the rules. The best people out there, and they don't really even have to play by the rules because they know if they go 2 inches this way, they're in better position and they will get the wave. They won't back off. They won't fall. And so that's years of contending with these weird subliminal messages and emotions about all the subtleties going on out there. There's so much going on that people from the beach, they don't realize.
Yeah.
And I don't know if all of this stuff is going on in a man's mind, because it might be just second nature. And it does become second nature, but I think women are definitely in general more influenced by the other personalities and energies out in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, when women paddle around me, it pisses me off so much more, especially when I know, and then this is my little ego picking at me, that I know them better than them. Like, what do you think
Right.
you're doing? It's such an asshole thing to say. Like, why do I have to, why do I have to be, I'm all for female empowerment. Why do I shouldn't have to step on people's quote unquote weaker than me.
But it's kind of, I think what you're addressing, I think it's important we talk about this, because it's like, okay, so part of us is like, okay, yay for the sisterhood, right? But then when a sister burns you, it's extra.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
we all know how much it took to get here.
Yeah. It feels like, really? Because I've had that feeling too. In fact, there was a girl who was visiting here for a while, and man, she bugged me. She was actually better than me, but not a ton better. Like, she just was a little bolder, but she put herself consistently. Part of it was her and part of it was me. I got mad that she could take off where I couldn't, but she also just never relented, like paddled right back at it and took the next wave. And technically, see, these are the subtle rules that we don't completely talk about. Like, if you go to, a certain break where people know each other, they'll respect each other, they actually have a rotation.
Yes.
It's hard to get in that rotation, but they do have a rotation. And, if you go there and you're accepted or whatever, and that really is the rule.
Yeah.
But the rules you're talking about that get broken all the time is the people that are like, well, I just paddled back out, but I'm deeper. I'm going to paddle deeper. I'm going to take this next wave, even though it's actually, the way I understand the rules, not your wave, but you can make it your wave.
Right.
And so I think it's when that kind of thing happens and it's a woman, it's like, really, there is if I'm honest, I'm probably more competitive with women too. I can definitely cheer for women in a way, even when I'm a little jealous, like I can still definitely be happy. If we're all playing fair, then I have a little more joy that way. But definitely it inspires that competitive nature in me as well, because, and especially, like you're saying, if somebody, it's like, can't we all help each other out a little bit? It's like with the shark, like, really, what do I have to do? And you're just like, seriously, what do I have to do? I've served 23 years. I've sliced all over my body, probably had concussions, stitches, all that. I should ask you a list of your injuries.
Oh, yeah.
And really, you're just going to come and Barbie it out there or something.
Right. So there's a couple more points. Yeah, right there. Well, so first of all, when I first started surfing, there was a group of girls who were so good. Local girls. I'm this little haole from Oregon, don't know anything about the ocean. And now that I've been here for this long, I understand how annoying I must have been out there, because I was in the way. I didn't know what I was doing. I was this new face in the lineup, messing it up, and I was a presence that wasn't going away. I received a cold shoulder from these women, and people thought I wasn't very nice, but I was extremely shy and very insecure, and I didn't know what to say, and I knew that I sucked. I knew that I wasn't doing things right, and these women didn't attempt to make things easier on me. And that was an emotional aspect to the whole thing. But then now I find myself doing the same thing to these girls, the new arrivals who already have a base knowledge of surfing from wherever they're from. But there's a lot more new faces. And I find myself cold shouldering and already having this preconceived, oh, great, who are these girls? And like, why am I thinking like that? But I have this one particular story. I don't remember who the girl is at the moment. I can't picture her face, but I was out at one of my favorite spots, and I've been surfing there for, 20 plus years. And I love the spot. And again, you pumped me up there, but I mean, I'm a decent surfer, but there's a lot of people way, 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 way with way more surf knowledge than me. But here's this one
I
particular.
understand, especially in Hawaii. I mean, the level of surfing, and I'll definitely, yeah, the level of surfing here is really, it's shocking. It's incredible. So,
but where we surf, there are some very, very, very good surfers, but it's not like a high performance wave, I would say.
sure. Yeah.
Anyway, I was out at another spot, and I know the wave. It was, a north swell wave, and there's this button there. There's this one little spot, and you can drop in deeper than there, but it's hard to make it around the section, and it's very steep. And I'm out there, and I'm obviously getting a lot of waves. This girl, she just keeps paddling around me and deeper than me. I mean, I'm just kind of laughing because she's not making her drops, and she's not making it. So I continue to paddle back to my little button, and she's paddling for the same wave, and I go and I make it, and she doesn't. And this just keeps happening. Part of me is like, okay, I'll just tell her where the spot is. I'll just say, if you just sit where I'm sitting,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to make the wave. But she didn't even think to ask me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obvious I knew the spot much better than her, and that I was making my waves. And I could have just extended that olive branch and helped her out, but she didn't ask. And I thought, like, if you just stopped paddling around me and asked a question or something, I would have completely opened up and helped her. But she just wanted to keep doing it her way. And so I just kept my mouth and kept getting waves. And I don't know what that's about, but I thought it was an
There's so much in what you're talking about, and it's really making me realize there's just a whole conversation women have to have as the surf culture changes the way it's changing, because the new women are just so excited and we're all sisters and blah, blah, blah. But I've even talked to some of the people kind of they start to get to that place where we're like, oh, I don't know if I want to surf in the club. I just want to get my own waves, because at a certain point, it is a very individualistic, competitive pursuit. And this is, the conversation of how do we manage what's coming and teach respect. And you don't remember this, but I actually did ask you where to sit in a specific place where we surf. And you were later, when I told you that, you're like, oh, I hope I was nice. And you were. You weren't just a bleeding heart, like, let me show you everything. You just said, well, I like to sit between these two rocks and you can line up here. And then you went back to your conversation. But it's because I seriously saw you catching every single wave and I couldn't catch it. And I'm like, what the heck? And again, it's partly because you could take off a little steeper, a lot steeper than I can. And it's annoying. It's like it's a conundrum, because it's annoying to be bothered, when you know more. And on the other hand, you kind of don't want to give up your waves or your secrets. But if you can get into a rotation, like when you're talking about surfing with, the women, and when you get into the rotation, then that competition eases because you understand the rules, you have agreements. And I think that's part of just what we need to keep talking about is, what are the agreements? And the agreements, some of which should be like, hey, if you're the top dog, there's nothing wrong with that hierarchy. It's an important hierarchy. And when you scrap and learn and bleed and get attacked and go through everything, you deserve that ranking. But if everybody's playing by the rules, that are discussed, then you may or may not give somebody a wave. But if you've gone and that next person is their wave, even if you're a little deeper, you probably will give it to that person.
Well, I feel like one thing that women do a lot more than men, which can be really annoying, is that if you paddle for a wave and miss it, you keep paddling. And I do it too, and I've done it. There's two things I wanted to say. If you back off on a wave, if you're paddling for a wave and you back off at the last minute, that's going to make everyone else in the lineup. Now you've shown your weakness in that area. And now how many chances are we going to give you? Just the you in general, just people out there.
Yeah.
Happens a lot. It's shallow, it's fast, it's steep. It can be scary. So how many free rebates do you get to try for the other wave if you pull back? And that can be frustrating because some people, the same people, will continuously go for a wave several times in a row and keep backing off. And then at that point, it's like, well, now I'm just going to go on you because you're not going. That's a factor out there. If you back off enough, you've missed your chance.
Yeah.
And also the missing the wave altogether, not necessarily backing off, but technically it's no longer your turn.
Right. I was going to say, let's break this down to make it, to get clear on what the real rule is, as I understand it too. Yeah. My understanding is if you paddle for a wave and you miss it, whether you back off, I mean, if you miss it because it's not makeable, and this is where all these gray areas happen, like you were paddling just because maybe, then I think everyone sort of understands that. So break it down. Let's break down this rule. Yeah. I'm going to let you explain it. Break down the rule of when you lose your turn.
Yeah. So if you're next up, you've been waiting, you're kind of the deepest, or, there's a lot of factors because there are different places to sit. In general, if you're the deepest, you're up. People ignore etiquette and paddle around sometimes to get deeper, but let's just say if you're up, you paddle for a wave, you miss it or back off, you've missed your turn. And that's it. It's pretty simple.
So then where do you go? Do you paddle to the end of the lineup then? Or do you sit out deep again? And, you've probably, if you've gone and missed, you're probably out of position.
Right.
So then you paddle to the end of the lineup is my understanding. Yeah. But a lot of people don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does make it confusing too when, you have waves like we do out here that kind of break wherever sometimes. Right. So there's not always one specific spot. So it can be a free for all, and everyone out there is opportunistic, and you have to be, Right. But yeah, I do wish there was a little more sharing out there, and I am guilty of it just as much as anyone else. I get hungry and aggressive out there. And unfortunately, when you start to pick up on people's weaknesses, you capitalize on that.
Right.
And that's just what everybody does. And that's how you get better, is because you're getting more, you're getting more waves, and you're using that kind of, you're learning people's vulnerabilities while you're out there, while trying not to expose your own,
Oh yeah. Nothing better than, I swear I go out some sessions and it looks like I've never surfed in my life. Yeah. And so, I know I watch what happens to me, so then I just paddle down to the next peak because I'm never going to get a wave. And then other days, my first wave is pretty good. And so, it's a different experience. And even though a lot of times it's the same people, well, I'm finally, really, I don't go the same time of day. So that changes kind of who, I would say, to kind of frame all this to be of service to people, is we all have this mental thing going on, but we really do, as women come more and more into lineup, need to educate each other on the rules. And this subtle piece is always going to happen. You're going to have more really good surfers at the peak that are women. Some of this stuff is going to happen, and be kind of under the radar. And did she really paddle? I hate those when, like, did the person just sort of drift over 2 inches? Did they really paddle around me? There's all those gray areas, but there's a lot of not gray areas, which is, you paddled for the wave. It is you don't get to go again, so go to the end of the lineup. And this stuff, maybe just the more we talk about it, if we can get, there's always going to be some conflict, because there's going to be, it just is, it's just the nature of it, because we're hungry and, we want waves.
I think most people know, but there are actually people out there who don't know.
Definitely. I think actually shortboard peaks and some of the etiquette, I think there's people that don't totally know that don't really know, like, wow, that really isn't my wave.
I remember getting called out, and I can't for the life of me tell you how long ago this was anymore. Probably over 10 years. I feel like I was surfing all right. I paddle out one day, the waves looked really fun. And you knew Steve. Yeah. Steve Macaries.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you know him?
I knew who he was. I didn't know
Yeah.
him personally.
And
Yeah.
he would give me pointers and things, and he was always the uncle out there. And he was a feature out there. He was one of the morning crew. He and Jerry would always be out. And I remember this one morning, Paul was out, and this was pre-shark attack. So this was a long time ago. I guess I paddled out and I went for a wave, got it, paddled back out, and didn't realize, but I had paddled right in front of Steve and turned around and went on the next wave. And he was irate. He paddled right next to me and just started getting every wave. And I was like, whoa. And he got so mad. He called me out. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, Steve. I was so excited. I didn't even think what I was doing.
Yeah.
There was maybe a subliminal understanding that maybe I didn't think he was quick enough or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember, but I honestly didn't even realize. And Paul saw it and he was pissed at me, and I felt so shame. So shame. It was like weeks of like, oh, I'm terrible. I need to be more aware. And that moment, Steve and Paul getting so mad at me, and everyone else had seen that, it made me start thinking more.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped getting as many waves. It was a kind of a really major learning moment in my surfing, where I took a step back and I would let people go more. And it was a phase because I felt so shame. I wanted to make it very visibly obvious that I was waiting my turn. But of course that subsides, and then you take that lesson, and then you have to, reignite your, get a little bit more aggressive and be confident and put yourself in the lineup. But that was a big lesson I learned.
Yeah. And and that speaks to something important, which is there still has to be, because it's kind of a free for all now. Everybody just thinks, oh, whatever, like the enforcers aren't there in the same way. And I will have given bad press to enforcers, mentality and just pure competition, but it's different than respect, So, it is important. First of all, surfing is dangerous. It's costs people blood and time and life and commitment. So there's something about respecting the whole thing. And that's where the enforcer mentality is important in certain ways. And I totally understand how it turns into localism and all these things, because people come out, and unfortunately waves they seem infinite, but they're not, like they're not infinite. We don't have a wave pool. So you've got this much time to get your fix. We are all kind of little addicts. I mean, there's the beauty and the good, the bad, and the ugly about all of our experiences with surfing.
Yeah.
But it kind of just is life again. Like, life isn't fair. Some people are more talented. There's all of this stuff, and we can equalize it. We can try to be respectful, and we can try and make a better world out there, but it's not going to be Disneyland, right. So I think it's really interesting. I love that we got deep into this stuff because, there's people at all different levels that listen and, it's cathartic to kind of talk about it and admit your own foibles. I know we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to ask you two quick questions because I want to make sure that I really get answers to this, because McKenzie is going to be out on a sailing vessel soon. What is your favorite thing about your surfing?
Kind of a long answer, but when I first started, I remember, so I had, like I said, I had these blonde dreadlocks, and there was this girl, her name was Erin. I haven't seen her in years, but she had blonde dreadlocks too, and she was a phenomenal surfer. And I remember seeing her surf, and I remember, like, even before that, I remember I just want to be able to stand up, and then I just want to be able to ride the face. And then I saw her surf, and I want to be able to do a cutback like that. And then I want to be able to do a cutback going backside. And then, you just keep setting new goals. And I never in a million years thought that I would get to the point where I'm at, where, now it's like, oh, I wish I could get barreled more. And, I still have a lot to learn, and I'm very inconsistent with my skill level. Like I can get a lot of waves, but I'm not always doing anything great out there, But again, we're often surfing very short waves and you only have a moment. But I guess in my surfing, I like that I've gotten to a point that's beyond the point I thought I would get. And I remember thinking a long time ago, I wish I could just surf whatever Kona had to offer. Like I wish I didn't have to sit out when the big days come. And now I don't surf the biggest waves or the gnarliest or the most hollow, but almost no matter what kind of conditions Kona throws, I can find a spot where I can surf. There's been some cool moments. And again, I have to reiterate, I am not the best female surfer on Big Island by a long shot, but there's been some cool times where, at some really special spots where it's pumping and it's good and like almost all of Kona is there and I can go out and get waves, a lot of them. And I don't know, sometimes I'm still surprised by that. Like, wow, I'm like one of the only girls out here and I can sit at the peak and get waves and I feel great about it. And I didn't know that I could get to that spot. And again, it's not always like that.
But I love that. And that's a great goal. I mean, that is for a lot of us, especially people that learn as adults, that is a major aspiration, and that is a major accomplishment because it is gnarly here and it's gnarly everywhere. I mean, to be able to say that you can surf, just get waves, just get out there and get waves. That's an amazing accomplishment.
I think this is something you wanted to talk about. It just the lessons you learn because surfing is a lifestyle, like we were talking about. It does kind of bleed into everything else that we do, as far as learning patience and learning to pay attention to conditions. And that's not just ocean conditions, but you go outside and you're looking at weather. And I know most surfers, me for sure, I want to know the state of the ocean constantly. Whether or not I'm getting in the water, I'm going to be anywhere near it. I want to know. Even when I'm in Portland visiting my family, I want to know what the ocean's doing.
Yeah.
I want to know what my home breaks are doing. I want to know if it's windy, what the tides are doing. It's just this, I just need to know what's happening out there, regardless of what I'm doing. And that kind of, I can't exactly say how that influences everything else that I do, but it kind of, I've always said this, I don't know if other people say this, but surfing's probably like the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to me. The best in that it's defined who I am and it's made me at least know who I am in a lot of ways and given me a lot of strength and toughness and taught me how to, be patient with myself and get through things and deal with pain and deal with emotions. And, but also it's limiting in a way because you can't be far from the ocean for too long because you start to go a little nuts. You can't just up and move to somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to calculate how often am I going to be able to surf? How far am I going to be away from the ocean? And for me, it's not just surfing, it's everything. I love being on the water no matter what. But that it's limiting in your careers almost and the places you can live and the people you date and the people you surround yourself in, because you need to be with people who understand that about you, that when the surf is up, that becomes priority and to not take it personally,
That's so true. So last question then, and I had more, but we're just going to go with this, is because you talked about careers and you've managed to really build a life around the water and you have a whole new exciting chapter that's opening up. You just got your captain's license. And so just tell us what's going to happen next.
When I was in Tahiti last year, house sitting for a friend, this is the same girl that I went sailing with many years ago, Liz Clark. She wrote a book. She has been a huge influence on my life because she embodies that recognition of fear and then moving past it. we're just walking right through it. We all have insecurities and fears, and you have to learn to look at them head on and figure out a way to get through it. And so through her, I learned about sailing and loved sailing. I lived on her boat, I think 3 months or something, and we surfed and sailed all over Panama and into the Galapagos. And I've since sailed with her in French Polynesia. And with sailing, it was the same sort of process. Like, oh, this is, I don't understand it. It's never going to be, it's too much. You know, I don't know anything about how sailing works and, diesel mechanics and driving a boat and all of this stuff. And let me tell you, I still don't know a lot about it. Most things, I know very little. But I just decided to get my captain's license anyway. And now take people sailing, and I'm like, shocked that wow, how did I get here? When did I get here? And is this even real? And I can't believe people trust me with doing that.
I would trust you. I can tell you already that I would trust you.
Totally working out. And but yeah, so it's just been that slow process of me figuring out how to make the water and traveling a part of my professional life as well. And I don't know where it will go. I'm working in Alaska this summer, so it's taking me there so far, and I don't know where it'll take, but it's really fun career change because there's no end to what I can learn from it. And every day I'm out there, I'm learning more and becoming more confident and realizing how little I know. So it's the dichotomy of building my confidence and getting better and realizing how little I know about everything.
Sounds like surfing. Sounds like everything. Sounds like life.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end. McKenzie, you've built such a rich, incredible life. I know just living vicariously through it has been a lot of fun. And I really do want to applaud you. You have such a, what's the word? You know, because people aren't seeing you exactly, but I think they can hear it in your voice. I want to sort of say regal bearing, you have really taken the time to honor yourself and to, commit deep into life, like really dig in. And it's very inspiring, and you're very, very cool. And thanks so much.
I've never heard the word regal directed at me.
You hold yourself with a lot of dignity, and it's not easy.
Well, that's a good point. I think surfing, if anything, teaches humility.
That's right. Which is, I think, that side, there's humility underneath it. And so I'm not even sure I totally have the right word, but yeah, it's this strength with humility. And you embody it. So I really appreciate it.
Well,
thank you so much.
I always like seeing you out there.